Hi everyone, I'm Johnny. Today we're taking a look at the Battle of Jangsari, a Korean War movie. This is a great tribute movie covering an important but overlooked battle within an important but overlooked war, a war that shaped Southeast Asia. The Korean War took place from June 25, 1950 until July 27, 1953, and is still considered an ongoing but frozen war with no peace treaty signed. Up to 3 million died during the war, with the majority of these deaths being civilian. Near 1 million soldiers lost their lives, the majority of which were North Korean and Chinese. For the South, at least 200,000 South Korean soldiers died, and around 40,000 men from UN forces, of which over 36,000 were American. The Korean War was a war of attrition. Almost every substantial building in North Korea was destroyed during the war. The U.S. dropped 635,000 tons of bombs, including 32,500 tons of napalm on Korea during the war. The war saw nearly the entire country's land sway back and forth under occupation from both sides, displacing people and creating millions of refugees, who often had to flee several times. Forces from both sides, particularly the South, committed political killings. The movie takes place in September of 1950. The U.S.-backed South Korean forces are confined to the southeast tip of the country and have been effectively losing the war. But UN forces are also planning a massive counterattack to retake the country in an all-out offensive along their 140-mile defensive line. This counterattack would owe much of its success to the Battle of Incheon, an amphibious invasion involving 75,000 troops, landing just west of Seoul in the middle of the country, behind North Korean lines. This was a daring but successful assault that turned the tide for the entire South. The Battle of Jangsari coincided with this surprise attack on the opposite eastern side of the country. Jangsari was also an amphibious landing, but one that was a diversionary attack designed to disrupt the North Korean army and draw attention away from the more important strategic operation. The Battle of Jangsari is of course far less known than the Battle of Incheon. However, troops here suffered a greater casualty ratio. Most critically to the story and history, these casualties were student volunteer forces. 718 of the 772 men who fought at Jangsari were teenage students, part of the independent 1st Guerrilla Battalion. Thousands of students volunteered to fight for South Korea, as the country was overrun at the start of the war. These students were known to be dedicated soldiers despite having little experience or training. At Jangsari, they completed their amphibious landings and captured the beach and hill stronghold at the cost of 150 casualties. They further fought off North Korea's counterattack until completely out of ammunition. They withdrew under fire and left the beaches minus 139 killed in action. Overall, the battle sequences are convincing. The battles don't offer a great tactical breakdown of the event, rather focus more on the up-close and personal feeling of fighting through a trench or crossing a minefield. Don't expect perfectly realistic combat sequences. Sometimes the film forgets about grenades or allows for a heartfelt conversation in the middle of a battle. There's also an anachronistic helicopter, a UH-1 Iroquois in the film, but it's all very forgivable if you remember the main purpose of this movie is to highlight these young, brave men who sacrificed everything on an unknown beach. The movie adds in some important hardships these young Korean men were experiencing. Some of these men came to the South with their families when Korea was divided into a Soviet-backed North and an American-backed South Korea. During this time, hundreds of thousands of Koreans, many landowners and Christians, fearing communism, fled south. This displacement of Koreans meant Korean soldiers could be fighting men from their former communities. This is poignantly highlighted in the film. Entire towns and communities in the country were completely destroyed and ravaged by both sides, and many soldiers had no communities or families to return home to after the war. As a production, the movie is decent all round. The acting, the battles, the pacing is all good. Nothing stands out as fantastic, but also nothing is overly bad, minus a touch of melodrama. Megan Fox appears in the film as a journalist named Maggie, a tribute to the real-life and highly decorated journalists Marguerite Higgins and Margaret Burke White, who both covered the Korean War. It was nice to see her in something different, though her scenes were unfortunately brief, with no time for any character development, making her character feel a bit token-like. Alright, I'm Johnny. Do check out the Battle of Jangsari. I think despite mixed reviews, it's a good film for getting a sense of how destructive the war was for the country, families, and youth. These stories are probably more important than ever as they remind us that war with our neighbors, or within our cultural borders, causes generations of pain for families and communities. But anyway, do like, subscribe, or whatever to support the channel, and we'll see you next time.